I don't know how close this is to my face, but I am going to try to walk you around my house and show you my bookshelves, how I organize my books, and do a little bookshelf tour. This is my TBR shelf, so I kind of have them grouped a little bit by topic. So I have some contemporary and literary fiction at the end. I have some parenting / child psychiatry books, which are good to read for my life, but also appropriate for work. And then some more kind of literary fiction here before we get into the fantasy books. So these are a bunch of the books that I'm looking forward to reading soon. The Call of the Wild is the next book that I'm going to be reading with the kids, which is why it's up here next to The Shadow of the Fox. And I'm also wanting to do a reread of the Dark Elf Trilogy, which is why it's up here. But otherwise, all of these books, minus Unfinished Tales, that my dad just got one of the really nice new versions, so he brought me his like old beaten up version that we both read, and I just haven't brought it downstairs yet, so that's why that is hanging out there at the end as well. So just a quick shot of these bookshelves, which are in my living room. We haven't had time to hang anything on the walls yet. So we have the International Space Station Lego up there for now. We're hoping to find somewhere to put that along with the Saturn V so that we can display them, and I can put up a canvas or something to cover those outlets. And then moving down, I like to pick some books. I look for them in secondhand bookstores to fit the colors of the season. So I have this really pretty copy of The Hound of the Baskervilles and copy of Kim that I felt like went with the spring kind of theme, just intermixed with some random things. Uprooted, I talked about before, or maybe after, because I haven't spliced this video together yet, is not there because it's a favorite particularly, but just because the cover is so beautiful. My husband got me the special UK editions of those with the sprayed edges, and they're so pretty. I have a copy of Little Women from Indigo. There's my broom again, making its way around the house. A copy from Indigo with the laser cut cover. Our kids play a lot of free Legos, so they put together their little creations and they each have a basket down there. I have these editions, bind-ups of Jack London's books, or some of his books, and some of Mark Twain's books. My dad gave me those. And he also picked out this copy of the Canterbury Tales just because he felt like it matched the decor here. And he brought that home for me last week, actually. Then I have a copy of The Sun Also Rises, which is one of my favorite books. And that just matched the frame of my daughter's school picture. And then up here we have the, I think that's the Canterbury Classics edition of Mallory's Arthurian stories. And then we have Edith Hamilton's Mythology, and that is it. So this is just like a very short little bookshelf that I still have yet to fully put together, but I just like to take some of the colors of the season and put them all together here on display in the living room. Next, I will give you a very obviously unstaged and unglamorous peek at the room that I do the recording in. So this is my husband's computer room, so his computer setup is right here, and then I have the other side of the desk over there where I do work or planning or reading or whatever. The treadmill has gotten plopped in here because there's nowhere else for it to go. We keep all of our board games in this closet, and there's an extra computer sitting here. There's a fridge down here. And then this is a really cool poster that used to hang in my dad's basement, and then when he moved, he didn't have anywhere to put it. So he brought it here and gave it to me. So this is a like very 1970s Lord of the Rings poster that looks like it might be made up of some scenes from The Hobbit. I'm not really sure what they were going for here, but it has like total nostalgia value for me. I have loved it ever since I was a little kid, before I even read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. It was always in my basement. And so I am hoping to hang it, once I move that broom, onto the wall and go from there. So I keep my fantasy books on these two bookshelves. And then across the room here, we have some fantasy, kind of RPG, some manga, and science fiction books. So I will move this stuff out of the way and then talk about the books themselves. So I'll just stand back a little bit to talk initially, but when we moved in, my hope had been to arrange bookshelves along this entire wall. And then it turned out that the foundation and the floor in my home is not straight. So I put a bunch of bookshelves over there and they were all lopsided. They were out of alignment. It looked really horrible. And I was sad, but kind of brainstormed other ideas. And this is what led to putting in some custom bookshelves in the other part of the house. And to be honest, if we decide to stay here and this is where we're going to live long term, then we probably will get some custom bookshelves installed in this room as well. The basic organization of these shelves is that it's mostly adult fantasy on one side and young adult fantasy on the other, with a little bit of mixing in between. I don't arrange them by author. I don't arrange them alphabetically. It's a little bit of a combination of, I want to make sure the ones that I really like end up in my videos or near the top of the bookshelves, and the ones that fit together thematically are sometimes on a shelf together, and we can talk about it a little bit more as I kind of walk over. So we'll start with adult fantasy. So part of this is also just what fits together. So on the end here, I have Swords Point and the other 2 novels in that series by Ellen Kushner. Then I have the Sword of Truth books, which I read for the first time by borrowing from a friend, and I didn't ever finish getting the rest of the series. I don't know if that's something that I will do in the future, just to have it be complete. I have my anniversary edition of The Name of the Wind, hopefully to add an anniversary edition of Wise Man's Fear in the future. I think Wise Man's Fear is just, oh gosh, that's not fun to look at. Yes, that's just behind there, and that one has been signed. I was lucky enough to see Patrick Rothfuss at Comic-Con, and he was really, really sweet, very kind, very nice to someone who was really shy when she met him. So that is all that I have to say about that. Then there is a collection of Neil Gaiman's works over here. Then down here we have Watership Down, which is my favorite book, or one of my favorite books of all time, followed by The Talisman by Stephen King. Then I have my Dark Tower books, which are in various degrees of disrepair. Some of them were, like these ones, I believe were my dad's, and then he got nicer, newer editions, and so passed along those ones to me. I did have his copy of The Gunslinger, but read it so much that it fell apart. So this is one of the newer ones that I have. And I was reading the series before these 3 came out. So I think I started reading it just after Wizard and Glass came out, but it had already been released when I picked up the first 4, and then followed it through to the end from there. And The Wind Through the Keyhole is there, and I have some Lord of the Rings books. So the version of The Hobbit that I'm reading with the kids is not there, thus the little hole. But I did pick up the beautiful watercolor illustrated versions that came out earlier this year. This is my first copy of The Hobbit, but not the first copy that I read, because that one belonged to my dad. I have a copy of The Hobbit in French. Then my original trilogy, that was mine. Again, I read my dad's, but that's the first one that I bought for myself. Then this really beautiful little, it's kind of like an electric candle. You can turn it on inside. It's got a little picture of the 3 books on top that my mom gave me for Christmas this year, and it's really pretty, so I appreciate that. And then we've got Beren and Luthien, the Tolkien reader here. I've got to make a space for the copy of the Unfinished Tales that my dad just gave me. And then we've got The Song of Achilles, which is one of my favorites, The Night Circus, which I really love, and The Sword of Shannara. I think that is an annotated version, and I have a lot of nostalgia for that book. Is it one of my favorites? Probably not, but I felt like it warranted a spot up there just for how much of my childhood was spent reading those books. And then down here, we've got John Gwyn's books. Gonna have to make room for The Shadow of the Gods or the Bloodsworn Saga in time. Joe Abercrombie's books I read through the library, and they're actually really hard for me to find in a bookstore here, so I've been trying to find them whenever I go in, but haven't had a lot of success, but I will keep trying. Then we have the illustrated Farseer trilogy, the original Farseer books that I read, which were in mass market paperback. Then we have the Book of the Ancestor, the Soulless Quintet, I don't know, the 5 books in the Soulless series, and Titus Groan. Again, I only have the first book in this trilogy, not really sure why, but I will buy the other 2 as well. I'm gonna just lay the camera down a little bit. And here near the bottom, we have a combination of kind of Greek mythology, Greek retellings, and books about King Arthur. So I have the Mists of Avalon, and then the Mary Stewart books. There's a retelling by Kirsten White that is ongoing right now. This Merlin series by T.A. Barron is a series for kids. A little bit underwhelming, definitely not one that I would recommend jumping into, and there are lots of other good places to start out there, but I keep it for nostalgia purposes. Then I have The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Mourillier. I'm really looking forward to getting into her books because I think that just the format and the style is going to be really up my alley. And then I have the Books of Woad series, which is this Robin Hood retelling, of which I have read 4 of the 5. Here at the bottom shelf, these are some of the books that I haven't had an opportunity to read yet, but I'm looking forward to reading. I have actually tried to read Mistborn twice. I have started it twice and stopped twice. I don't know why. I don't even think I made it past the first chapter. There's some barrier in me that is resisting Brandon Sanderson, and I don't know if it's because I started reading him with the Reckoner series, which I really didn't like, or what it is, but I do want to read his books, and I will read them. It will just take a little bit of time. I did buy the first Wheel of Time book because I'm hoping to get into that. And then I also haven't read N.K. Jemison's series. There's just another copy of Mary Stewart's book down there, which I have read but doesn't fit with the other books up on the other shelf. Moving over to the mostly young adult shelf, we have Harry Potter up at the top. I have one illustrated version. I will get the other illustrated versions when I start reading these with the kids. But I don't think they're quite ready for the later books. I think they'd be fine for books 1 and 2, probably even 3, but they're not quite ready for the others. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a pause before I go on to those. These figurines are really old. They're from, I think they're pre-first Harry Potter movie. And I used to have a bunch of them, but then I had children, and this is what happens when you have children. So I probably could have been harsher and not let them touch them or play with them, but I like sharing my things with them, and this is what happens sometimes. So poor little Hedwig has lost a wing. Poor little Norbert in there has lost some wings, but I still keep them up there. This is a little soapstone carving that my dad bought in Labrador for me when I was a teenager, and it has traveled with me from home to home. We have the His Dark Material series, which is one of my favorites. The Graceling series is one of my favorites for young adults. The Hero and the Crown and the Blue Sword by Robin McKinley, also one of my favorites. And Laini Taylor's Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, also one of my favorites. I fit the rest of the Sword of Shannara books here because they didn't fit on any of the other shelves, and it's kind of next to that annotated version, so I just put them one shelf over. Spinning Silver and Uprooted, which is upstairs, neither one are my favorite fantasy books, but the covers are so pretty that I feel like I wanted to put them out. And I move this one upstairs to go on display in the winter, and I keep Uprooted upstairs on display in the spring and summer because the covers are so beautiful. I really love the Raven Boys cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. Really love this series, The Andi Darken, which is a gender-bent retelling of Vlad the Impaler and is absolutely brutal. For anyone who says that young adult fiction does not have high stakes, you should read this trilogy. So good. 6 of Crows duology. These are some books that I really loved when I was a young kid, like preteen, and hoping that my kids will also enjoy. And these books, Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time, I don't even know how many books are technically part of that series, but at least these 5. These were some of my favorite books when I was a young person, and I still love them so much. They're so good. Cannot wait to be able to read those with the kids as well. Those are more science fantasy, so kind of a blend of science fiction and fantasy. We have Aragon. Again, like a lot of nostalgia probably for this series, but I also don't think it's as horrible as people make it out to be. I think it's just one of those series that gets dumped on a lot on BookTube. Is it highly original? No, but it's enjoyable. It's fun to read. Seraphina and Shadow Scale. I had the opportunity to meet the author Rachel Hartman at Comic-Con in 2012, which is a really long time ago now. But she was on a panel with Christopher Paolini actually about dragons in fantasy, and her discussion at the panel was really good, so I picked up her book. And I really like, we have Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass, which is in my opinion, such a fun, tropey, young adult fantasy series. Really enjoyed reading those. I did not enjoy her other series, so I have not read that one, but I really, really liked Throne of Glass. We've got Hunger Games, kind of a blast from the past. Howl's Moving Castle, a really random book called The Goblin Wood that I got from a Scholastic book fair, I think, when I was really young, and I enjoyed it. The Last Unicorn, Rainbow Rowell's Carry On series, and then Cemetery Boys, which was a really cute romance that I read last year and really liked. Then moving down to the bottom two shelves here, we have Jade City and Jade War, which I have read. I did not love them as much as everybody else seems to, but I will finish out the trilogy. There's Tales from Watership Down, a book by my friend whose name is Shannon Sullivan called The Dying Days, which is an urban fantasy that takes place in St. John's, Newfoundland. Then I have All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. I really enjoyed that. It is a true melding of science fiction and fantasy, in my opinion. Then we have Cinda Williams Chima's Demon King. I don't know what those are called. Oh, the Seven Realms. Her Seven Realms novels. The first Alana Quartet, The Girl Who Drank the Moon, The Strange and Beautiful Life of Ava Lavender. We have the Renegades trilogy, which is like a YA superhero trilogy, which I really enjoyed up until the ending, which I thought was really, really bad. I've got 2 of the Cruel Prince books and 2 of the Serpent and Dove books. I have a really pretty version of Peter Pan. And then a variety of other kind of middle grade-ish novels over there. Then on the bottom, I have all of the Twilight books. This is the part where you can feel free to judge me, but I have, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 copies of Twilight. So if you want to stop following me, then that's fair. But Twilight came out at a time when I was kind of at the cusp of adulthood and had just been like horrendously dumped by a boy that I really liked a lot. I had been away for a couple of months, and it was the day that I got home that he broke up with me. I was not expecting it, and I was really sad. And so what I did to make myself feel better during that time was eat a lot of ice cream, read that copy of Twilight, which obviously looks like it's been read a million times, and watch Sailor Moon. And, you know, I wallowed for a couple of weeks, and then I got over it, and I feel very thankful that Twilight was there to provide me with a very unrealistic representation of what romance should be. And then the rest of that shelf is YA that I have not read yet. So I haven't read any of the ones kind of starting from Soldier onward. So the shelves on this side get a little more eclectic. As I said, there's a bunch of different things on here, and it also is a bit of a Lego placeholder for my husband. So we have the Batmobile. I don't even know if I can get up close enough here, but we have the giant Batmobile at the top. We're trying to find a way to display or store that. If anybody is also an adult who enjoys building giant Legos, please let me know if you have any recommendations for how to display them in your home. So I guess we'll start up here. This is mostly my husband's manga. I have a really hard time reading manga. I don't know why, because I do like graphic novels. I don't know if it's the black and white thing. I'm not a very visual person, so I do have a bit of a difficult time, but he has 17 volumes of Fairy Tail, which is not even close to all of them. A couple of Legend of Zelda mangas. Socrates in Love is mine. I did really like that book, so I bought the manga. We've got like a couple of the combined Bleach. Death Note, you can see where my husband became disillusioned with the series and stopped it. And then we have a bunch of Sailor Moons and then an anniversary card that I made my husband. Down here, again, these are mostly my husband's books. So he actually enjoys the Septimus Heap middle grade series more than he likes Harry Potter, which is definitely his fantasy unpopular opinion. We've got a bunch of Warcraft books, of which I don't know if I read this one. No, I read this one, Chronicles of War. This one is centered around the orcs. This is what made me want to play on the Horde when I was playing Warcraft and had time for that, along with my husband. But I really enjoyed it. I think there is some crossover between people who write the kind of World of Warcraft novels and the Star Wars novels. So if you've enjoyed the extended Star Wars universe, then you might enjoy some of these books as well if you're a Warcraft player. I have only read this one. I haven't read any of the others, but my husband enjoys them all to varying degrees. Then we have 2 of Brent Week's Assassin Trilogy. I read that, borrowed from a friend, and thought my husband would like them, so I bought him the first 2. He did enjoy them, so I'll get him the 3rd one at some point. I have these like random young adult versions of the Dragonlance books, which I believe have pieces that are cut out of them. Then a couple of the original Dragonlance books. Again, most of these I read from borrowing from friends when I was younger and have picked them up at like secondhand bookstores or libraries since. My husband loves R.A. Salvatore, so we have all of these. The original Dark Elf Trilogy, which is upstairs on my TBR cart, is mine. And then my husband read that from me and then went on to read like all of these other ones. I think I will try to read the Icewind Dale trilogy, but I don't have a ton of interest in reading all of these books. These are kind of new ones that are focused around, I believe, Jitz's father. Not entirely sure, so don't quote me on that, but he has enjoyed those as well. So then we get down to this shelf, which is mostly Stephen King. I don't read a lot of horror. I don't really read any horror except for Stephen King. And I only read his horror because I love his writing and I love his books. Next to that, we've got some H.G. Wells, Flowers for Algernon, World War Z, and Children of Time, which I have yet to read, but I bought my husband for Christmas this year, so I'm hoping that we're going to read it together at some point throughout the year. Then we get down, the comic books are all on the bottom because some of them are really heavy. I just have a Marvel Encyclopedia back there. I have all these hardcovers of Civil War because Civil War was really big the year that I went to Comic-Con, and I wanted to bring back a memento, so I thought that a good memento would be these giant Civil War bind-ups. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. They were really heavy to carry in my carry-on bag, so I sure did not want to pay to put them through as part of my luggage. We've got Brewbacker's Captain America. We've got Fraction's Invincible Iron Man. Then I've got some more Iron Man. I really like Iron Man. So we've got some more Iron Man comics down there. Marvel 1602 by Neil Gaiman, which is a really fun retelling of the Marvel universe that takes place in 1602. It's a really good comic book if you just want to read a random superhero comic. It melds a bunch of the different characters together. You don't really need to know any history of the comic universe in order to read it. And Neil Gaiman always writes fun comics, so that one is really enjoyable. Then we have some Spider-Mans, which are my husband's, and The Runaways, which I really enjoyed, but didn't completely finish. Then we've got Nightfall, which is one of my husband's favorite Batman comics, a bunch of random Batman kind of standalone comics, most of which I have read, and then some of the newer DC comics that my husband really tried to get into, but I don't think found it very easy to do so. Up here we have Monster, which is a manga that I'm going to try to get into. I read the first volume and I liked it, so we will go from there. We have Slave One. I believe this is a 20th anniversary Lego edition, but my husband has various Lego Slave Ones, so I'm not really sure which one this is. A poor TIE fighter that has been disassembled by my son. And then I believe this is a Lambda transport. Do not quote me on that. My husband is the Star Wars expert. I like Star Wars. He is fanatical about Star Wars. Then we have a Boba Fett bust here. And then the extended universe, which I have tried to the best of my ability to put in some kind of a chronological order. I actually haven't read any of the extended universe, but it's something that I would like to do. I'm going to start with the Thrawn Trilogy, which is back here, just kind of tucked behind Boba Fett's head, and then continue on with some of the others. He is missing parts of this collection because he has built this up through secondhand bookstores and garage sales and anywhere that he can pick them up. And he now has this completely ludicrous, this completely ludicrous rule that he doesn't want any of the ones that are called Legends because he's just very angry at Disney right now. And we won't get into that in this video, but he is very passionate about his Star Wars opinions. Neither one of us collects Funko Pops, but we won this at a trivia night. And so we keep this little Poe on the Star Wars shelf. My kids gave him this little Galaxy's Best Father bobblehead type thing. And then we got some more EU books. There's a French Star Wars comic that I brought home from him when I lived in France, and we were separated for about 6 months, and just a couple more Star Wars comics here as well. Then we get down, I'm just trying to lay this down gently without jostling the camera too much. So we get down to some of the science fiction works on the shelf. I have not read Paolini's science fiction, but I just got it this year for my birthday. Similarly, got Axiom's End for my birthday. I love the Red Rising series. I started reading it as it was released, and I'm really glad to see a lot of people picking it up and loving it on BookTube now. I don't have the other novels because I've just been reading my dad's copies. He's got them all in hardcover, and I'm really jealous about that, but I just read his hardcover copies when they are released. Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake is one of my favorite works of science fiction, and I've got a couple more of her books there. My husband really likes Becky Chambers' novels. He finds them very soothing and wholesome, and so those are his. He owns this Robopocalypse, Robogenesis. He owns most of these books, actually. A lot of the science fiction is his, minus Frankenstein. Oh gosh, sorry. Frankenstein is mine. Brave New World, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Basically, like the classics that can be kind of viewed as literary fiction-esque are mine, and most of the harder science fiction is his. I have read nearly all the books here, minus the first two, and I haven't read Dune, so that is another plan for this year, is to read Dune. Then on the bottom, the part of my tripod is kind of sticking out. This is definitely not a professional recording job. We've got Watchmen and V for Vendetta. We've got the Dark Tower comic books, which I really enjoyed. Transmetropolitan, which I've only read the first 4 volumes, but I really like it. We've got Sandman down there. Saga, which is probably my favorite ongoing comic series. We've got a couple of like literary comics down here. We've got some of the Firefly comics, the Legend of Korra comics, my husband's, some of his space books, the ones that wouldn't fit on our space shelf out in the other part of the bookshelf in the basement, and then just Dungeons and Dragons stuff because it's really heavy and it's got to go on the bottom of this shelf. So the final part of this video will just be these custom bookshelves that we recently had put in, and I will go through these a little bit faster because they're not fantasy related. A lot of them are kids' books. There's my messy blanket on the couch. Oh, and my Diet Pepsi and popcorn from last night. You can tell that I am a really tidy person. And there are usually a bunch of toys up here, but our daughter just had a birthday and we took down a bunch of them to play with the kids. So I'll just move up a little bit and kind of walk you through the books on these shelves. I'll start over on the edge here. So we've got some random young adult, contemporary, and some Jodi Picoult novels up here. Moving down, I've got nonfiction on this shelf. So we've got a lot of my husband's space-related nonfiction, then some science nonfiction, then into more of the memoir-type nonfiction. And then after that, we've got a little bit of kind of sociology and some short fiction and poetry. This very tiny little shelf that I put together so that I could fit the books on the next shelf down. I just put some travel books and some of my notebooks. Then down here, I had to make room for this giant Beatles anthology. So these are my Beatles books. I think there's one missing from there because I had it taken out for something, kind of a picture book to display, and that is an anniversary card that my husband gave me that I think I'm going to put in a little frame because it fits well on the shelf and it looks nice. But I love the Beatles. I was, funnily enough, a competitive badminton player throughout a lot of my life. And my dad was the person to drive me to competitions and tournaments and accompany me when I had to go out of the province. And we listened to a lot of the Beatles. So I still love listening to the Beatles and they are my favorite band. We'll move up and over here. So again, on top, this is a lot of YA contemporary. I really like Rainbow Rowell's books. Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli is kind of one of my favorite middle grade transition into YA books. Down from there, I've got literary fiction / I guess you'd say like modern classics maybe. I love most of these books, really love Kurt Vonnegut. The Sun Also Rises is my favorite by Ernest Hemingway. I really love A Visit from the Goon Squad. I really, really, really dislike A Confederacy of Dunces. So if you enjoy that novel, please tell me why. These are classics. And then at the end, just some of my French books from my undergrad degree. And then we've got contemporary fiction down here. Beartown, my mom has, so that's why it's not with the rest of the Frederick Bachman. I really enjoyed Trust Exercise. That's relatively new. Very cool structurally. If anybody has read it, would love to hear your thoughts on it. I thought that was really interesting. Up on this top shelf, we've got the total sum of my crime novels, which are The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or the Millennium Trilogy, which I really liked and read whenever that came back out like a million years ago. Well, You Know, which I got at a book fair. The Magpie Murders was for a book club. My children are arriving home, so it's about to get a lot noisier. And then some some historical fiction, and some romance up here. There we go. Welcome home, children. So this shelf is Canadian fiction. I really love Margaret Atwood. I love Patrick DeWitt. Thomas King, I studied in university, really love his work as well. And Miriam Toews, one of my all-time favorite authors for sure. Then I'll just quickly run you through the childhood shelves here. So there's a bunch of Babysitters Club books up there that I read when I was younger. We've got Pony Pals, we've got Sweet Valley Kids, we've got Laura Ingalls Wilder up there. Some children's versions of Shakespeare, Golden Books. We've got Beatrice Potter, Franklin, some Dr. Seuss books. Then up here, we've just stored some video game cases until we get more books to fill in these shelves. And then we've got Narnia up there and a bunch of like middle grade standalones or middle grade series. We've got some little paintings that my kids did. Then down here, we've got some fairy tale retellings, some early reader books. My daughter really loves Phoebe and the Unicorn. That's down here. My son really loves Captain Underpants and Dogman, but he keeps them upstairs on his shelf. Then over here, we've got animal encyclopedias. My daughter is a total animal fanatic. She loves reading facts about animals. And so we've got a bunch of those types of books over here. They're just scurrying behind me right now, so you can hear the clicking. And then over here on the last shelf, we've got some kind of Lego books, some more animal, kind of head-to-head animal battle books. We've got little scenes that we used to use to play animals with, and we've got some empty shelves to grow into. So that is the end of the bookshelf tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about book organization, about the types of shelves, anything like that, then just let me know and I will answer to the best of my ability. Bye.